Okay, we are live. Welcome, everybody. We are, how many days out are we from Decision Day? Wednesday,
Six?
Thursday,
Is it
Friday.
six Friday?
Yeah.
Depends on the deadline, right? Because
Yeah.
it's technically May 1st, but it's on a Sunday this year. So it might be May 2nd or May 3rd for some of you. But anyway, we're very close to Decision Day. The days, I said this on Twitter the other day. The days go long and they're also short.
Yeah. There's
It
not enough
then
time to do everything
and
you need to do.
and yet it feels like
Yeah.
it's never ending time. It's
Hmm.
a very weird time paradox that you forget about. It's the November to January time paradox, and then the April to May. And I feel like it only happens towards the end. Anyway, Decision Day
Yeah.
is coming up. Let's not just talk about Decision Day. Decision Day is coming up, and I am here with Amy, who is still deciding, even though I have preferences. But we're not going to force other people to live our lives for us. Um, she's still deciding between, can you tell everybody the last two standing?
I'm deciding between VCU and then Richmond University.
Oh
Virginia
wow.
Commonwealth University and Richmond. Very different experiences. And
Mm.
then, of course, we have somebody I would say is like one of the most honest admissions officer enrollment professionals. It's you. I've met in a long time. I just feel like when I'm talking to you, it's like the most honest conversation. And to be fair, we were going to talk about opportunities for juniors, and then we realized that we were both deluding ourselves and we need to talk about admissions. I mean, decision day again. So, Jeremy, do you
Yeah.
want to tell everybody who you are, about you, your institution, and your podcast?
Yeah. So my name is Jeremy Branch, the Senior Assistant Director of Enrollment Management out of Penn State's Brandywine campus, which is like 30 to 35 minutes southwest of Philadelphia in the suburbs. I'm in my immediate past president of PACAC year and NACAC board director nominee as well, and host of the Beebo University podcast. So this is good to be with you too.
Where
I've been
does
looking forward
Beebo
to this
come
for a
from?
while. That's my nick. That's a family nickname, family friend
Oh,
nickname
okay.
that ironically, well, hilariously and strangely came from an old Real Housewives of Atlanta episode. So that's
I
a
think I
story for another day.
know what you're
That's
talking
a story
about.
from another
Yeah.
day.
Okay, so this is what we're going to do. Um, Amy and I were talking about this like right before we came on, and then you and I were talking before we came on. I was like, we should have talked about that after we came on. But I think, Amy, what is the hardest thing for you to decide in the last couple? Like, we are literally 6 days out.
Mm.
And so you've done the talks with advisors, you've gone on the tours, you've checked all the boxes.
Mm-hmm.
Now what?
I'm I'm still I'm still trying to think of what I want at a university because my two universities are very different. So I'm still trying to figure. I feel like I could thrive in both universities, but I just want to figure out what exactly that I want and what experience that I want from these colleges.
Mm.
Hmm. And as always, I mean, price is a huge factor for college admissions because we live in a country where, we have to pay for college admission. Jeremy, what do you say to that? Because I feel like sometimes, I feel like for some students, it's this is where I got in, this is where I need to go financially, this is where I need to go. But for
Hmm.
some other students, it's like the offers are very similar, everything is very similar, the different campus lives. I told Amy, the problem is that you don't have bad decisions on the board
Yeah.
anymore.
Yeah. Sometimes it's a slam dunk. You're right. Like sometimes you look at the offers that you have before you and you count the numbers and you look at like, hey, does one has my major and one doesn't have my major? So then
Right.
you've already made up your mind, right? But I think what's so difficult for students right now, like yourself, is like there's so much other noise, right? Because like
Right.
I'll meet students around this time of year and they're pretty settled. Like they're like, okay, I'm feeling good about this. I may have a sweatshirt, right? But then mom and dad are unsettled. And they're saying, well, what? Oh my goodness, she's thinking about going away. Are we ready? Right. So it's not even the student and whether or not the student's ready. It's like now mom and dad are throwing a wrench in it, or uncle had something to say at the last dinner. And now you're like, now he's in your head a little bit. Or you
Right.
notice that your teacher is like one of your favorite teachers is always saying, well, are you sure? because of these other two on your list? Are you sure this is the one? And so I think a lot of that noise sometimes leads to some of that indecisiveness with the student. And that's what I'm seeing with a lot of students that I've worked with in the last 2 weeks. It's the noise.
And I would say especially if you're in an underrepresented population, or if you're from a Black community, there is sometimes this feeling of obligation to go to the big name brand school, because it's like, you don't want to let everybody down, but even though you know that's the other fit. And I tell people all the time, there's only 2 reasons I've ever had that students have transferred. And the first one is, like something happened either with their family or on campus where it was dramatic, traumatic, and they just need to leave. The other one, and I would say the students that are not leaving for that reason, most students are happy when they arrive on campus. Like, they just make it work. But the students who are unhappy are usually the ones that were forced into the decision, where they were like, I thought that I wanted to go here. I let everybody pressure me into going there, and they can't let go of the idea of who they could have been somewhere else. And that is pervasive in all of their thoughts. So I feel like I love decision day. I feel like we're doing this thing where we're like, I love it. I love and hate decision day at the same time.
Me too.
Okay.
Me too.
How do you feel?
No, I like it because it's like the end, and then you'll be finished. But it's kind of like, now it's like the hard part.
The pressure. Jeremy, what were you going to say?
No, I was going to say it's a beautiful thing, because I mean, listen, this is a journey, and I like, a lot of people talk about what you've gone through, Emily. Like, they'll talk about it as being like a process, and I've always hated that term associated with a student's college search. It's a journey, because a process is arduous. Being like, rehabbing an injury is a process. You are going to doctor's appointments, you are going to rehab, you are working your butt off just to get back to square one. That's not what we're doing with our college search, right? We have the high points of like, oh my God, that first campus you walk onto where you feel it in your gut, like, I can see myself here. That's a high point. You have low points where that thin packet comes in the mail, which is a denial letter, right? Like,
don't even get packets in the mail anymore.
Yeah, well, listen, I'm aging myself. Slow down.
I know exactly what you're talking. You're like,
but you're just like, oh my goodness. Or like, you're reading that email that comes down, or it's in the portal, and that's a very short letter, and you already know before you even made your way through the first line. Paragraph, hey, this did not work out, or I'm waitlisted, right? And so where you're at right now, that destination is there. It's like when you've arrived at this place you're going on vacation, you see the exit, right? Like, if you're heading to Disney World and you see that awning with Mickey Mouse and Minnie, you're like, all right, we're here. That's where you're at. And to like spending time with families and seeing that delight on their face at like accepted students days, or that final time that they walk the campus for their tour, that leaves me
right back in. Sucks you right back in.
It's awesome, but at the same time, it's painful, because I also see the student where they cannot make up their mind, or like we said, they were settled, but somebody else has thrown a wrench in their spokes, and like now the bike is flipping because somebody just threw something in there, or they thought it was financially feasible until they really spent some time with that packet and that package, and they're like, oh wait, like, I saw this years ago with a young lady I was working with. They could not even afford the first payment, let alone the first year's tuition. And it's like, wait, when were you going to have a conversation about this? And it was that like, oh, we'll make it work theme all year, until you realize like, no, there is no way we can make it work. And so that's why this time of year is so bittersweet, because you see the students who get it right, they arrive at their destination, they're happy. And then you also see the ones that like feel further away than they did even back in September.
And I feel like once you get that financial aid package, it's a confrontation with the truth, right? Like at that, you hit the thing that I don't like about this process. I wish we actually had a transfer portal, just like we had for NCAA, where students could say, I did not get enough financial aid from these institutions, and institutions that need students to enroll are available to say, we are available, right? Because for me, what happens is we talk a lot about like, well, students need to know their budget, but like at the end of the day, when you go to a presentation, students are like, They're like, oh my God, but like, I can't afford this. Like, scholarships,
Yeah.
they'll be there. And then when you get that package, you're like, hey, where's the scholarship? They're like, oh, maybe in 2 weeks you'll get a scholarship. And then 2 weeks out, you don't get a scholarship. Oh, they're like, oh, well, there's no scholarship. And a lot of times you're already taking out a loan. So
Yes.
it doesn't feel like a huge commitment to say, well, what's the difference between $10,000 and $15,000? I'm borrowing it anyway. Well, that's $20,000 over 4 years, and that's not even fixed 20 because most of the time it's going up. And so one of the things, and if your income changes, especially if you're 100% need met,
and what kind of loan is it, and what is my interest rate?
Right.
You know, that's part of it too.
And so you see that happen. Amy, talk to us about how did you navigate financial? Why am I saying it so slowly? I'm like, let me say it in a safe way. How did you navigate financial aid, and how much do finances come into play when you're making your decision?
Finances to my parents is like 100%. Like that's that's like the main thing. Before getting like my packages and stuff, they were like, okay, you could pick whatever college you want. Like, we'll make it, like the whole thing about we'll make it work. But then when you realize it at the end and they see like the packages that you get, it's like, oh no, that's not gonna work. Like, it's like, okay, that's fine. But then I haven't gotten my package for Richmond, so it's kind of like weighing back and forth between.
It's filling in forms and making sure everything's right. And, you know, I think some parents get like really upset during that because they're like, oh, you must not value. It's like, yeah, I value your kid, but like the money's coming from the Fed, y'all. Like, we can't just not have the forms. Like, the government doesn't let us do that. But I think, and I think the worst case scenario, and this is why I tell students, do not put colleges on your list that you do not want to go to, is the college that you want to go to the least is the one offering the most. And your parents are like, look at that. Makes it easy. And you're just like, no, Jeremy, financial dreams. What happens when, whatever happens to a raisin in the sun, Jeremy, when your financial dreams dry out?
You know, that's a great question. You know, I think right now, sometimes like we need to find out who are those people in our circles, in our corners, who are going to help us save us ourselves from ourselves. Right. And like I've always said that that's one of the things that school counselors do, you know, like they help save students and families from themselves. And like I'll give you an example of why I say that. You know, my sister went to, you know, a private school that, you know, it had some weight to its tuition. And there's 6 years between us. My older sister, 6 years older than me. I'm 6 years older than my brother. And so by the time it came to my search, like my father literally took my piece of paper that had my schools on it and he just was crossing them out. And at the time I was like, how dare you? Right? Like, this is
I worked hard.
I worked hard. This is my dream. Like, you're all melodramatic about it. But what he was doing at that point in time, because we had learned lessons from what my sister did, he was like, I'm gonna save you from yourself, essentially. And we already know that we're out kicking our coverage with some of these schools on the list. We are not doing that yearly tuition there. And so although it hurt on the front end, it saved me on the back end, because like you said, now I have schools on my list that are financially feasible. So now I am open to make decisions based off of the other things. Like, Emily, you were talking about, like, I want to find that place, like that place that I can be successful in, that like fits me. Well, like when you have that list tailored in such a way that, like, hey, the options that I have before me are feasible, then it's more opportunity to do that. Right now, we have a mix of that, right? We have students that, hey, things worked out in that way. And now they're open to say, well, what's the best fit and where do I feel represented and all of that type of stuff. Whereas there are some families right now just that need to, you know, just humble themselves in a way and just accept the one that is financially feasible. Because here's the thing. If you can't afford, and you alluded to this, Jen, like if you can't afford it for 4 years, what's the point?
Right.
What's the point? because our whole goal here is to not only, grow as a person
Yeah.
and broaden and widen our worldview. It's also like, hey, I would like to earn a bachelor's degree. And if I
Make
know in
money.
year one, that's going to be really difficult because of what is or is not in my packet, then I need to go with that. Here's I think the silver lining though. And I'm a firm believer on this because I've seen it in my personal life and I've seen it with other students. We put too much weight on an institution making us successful.
Oof. You're gonna
Too much
wait. Hold on. Say it again. Say it
We
again.
put too much weight on an institution being the thing that makes us successful. It's what you do while you're there. And I'm going to give you a great example of this. There's a student on my campus that just won an award. I'm at Penn State's Brandywine campus, as I mentioned, and her name's Hamani. Hamani's a computer science major, and she just won this research symposium on this research. I never even heard of what she was researching. It was exploring the effectiveness of HIDS for machine learning data defense. Now, this young lady on my campus of 1,300 students is a Schreier Honor Scholar, which there's only about 2,000 of them at the entire university with over 95,000 students. She's worked for Lockheed Martin. She is brilliant. But you know what Hamani did in her search? She said, you know what? She could go anywhere. I know she had offers. I met her as a freshman when her and her parents sat down with me and said she wants computer science in 4 years. What do we need to schedule at her high school to make it happen? I know she had options, but you know what? She was saying, I want to choose a place where I'm comfortable, it's financially feasible, and then I will do and accomplish whatever I want to there. And that's what she's done on our campus, right? Every single one of our schools have study abroad. They have mentors, whether in the faculty ranks or in the staff ranks, that are going to do an excellent job by us. They have clubs and organizations. So what are you going to do to take advantage of those resources at any of these institutions? That's why, I sometimes will sit down with a student and I'll say, look, I know maybe the school that has offered you the most, that's going to be the least expensive, might not be your first choice. I get that. But do you know that there are other students who would kill to be in the position you're in? There are young men and women I've been working with this year. They don't have any options. They may be a student who's undocumented and they want to come in my institution, but it does not work because they can't put their parents' name on those financial aid forms, right? That student would love to say, well, I have to go here, right? Like, it's perspective at this time of the year that I think is really important for students. We get too caught up in, well, this was not my dream. Well, dreams change and you can still accomplish your dreams. Yeah,
dream school is a lie. Let's just talk about. See, this is, and I love that, Amy. I love that he was like, "I'm the most honest person you know." One of the most honest people. But dream school is a lie, and let's just be honest about the college industrial complex, right?
Yeah.
At the end of the day, we have to make this decision feel like it is the biggest decision of your life, because we're to the point where colleges now. When I went to college, it was like $3,000 to $5,000 for me to go to Virginia Tech. It was about 15 everywhere else, but now it's comfortably at 45, 50. That's what I was paying for law school at the time, and so we have built up this really big thing, right, where it's huge. And we need to justify that cost by saying it's the biggest decision. It's going to set you apart. It's going to blah, 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 yada, yada, yada. It's going to be every dream that you have is going through this college, right?
Yeah.
Every opportunity has to come through this college. And so students get so locked in on this concept of a dream school that they don't realize. And then they break down when they don't get in, or it's not affordable, or they can't go for some reason. And I am one of those students. I talked about this openly. I got waitlisted at UVA. It was so traumatic that my mother remembers the day. If you ask my mother, she's like, May 5th, 2002. It was sunny. I walked down to the mailbox and I got waitlisted. And then I went to Virginia Tech and I was like, this is where I'm supposed to be, because I hadn't even visited Virginia Tech at that point. I knew instantly I could make that work. And I think some students, you're not going to feel that instantly, but I don't love feels and vibes. I love safety and security and making sure you're
Yes.
not going to be, have hate crimes against you and things like that. I love that. But
Yes.
feels and vibes, I Amy knows exactly what I'm about to say next. What do rich colleges do well, Amy?
Rich colleges make it seem like it's like Disneyland.
Hmm.
Yeah,
It's like a whole like charade, and
it's
it's supposed to be that.
right. Every rich college is going to feel good. Like
Yeah.
that is the truth. Every rich college is going to feel good. What opportunities do you need to be where you're at 4 years from now? And then also, you might change. So how can the
Oh,
university adapt to your change? Because you might think right now, listen, when I was going in, I told my sociology professor, law school, law school, law school. And I remember being so angry at him because he's like, what if you don't
mhm,
want to be a lawyer? I'm going to make you take this class so that you can explore
mhm.
other options in sociology. I was like, I don't need that. I'm always going to be a lawyer. Like the confidence of the 20s, your early 20s. I can't believe you would even think that. And I went to law school and I
Yeah.
was like, oh, I actually don't want to be a lawyer.
Yeah.
But a lot of kids, they get to college and they realize this is not what I thought it was. And
Yeah.
you have to have a university that gives you flexibility and is not going to trap you there for 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 years.
Yeah, because a vibe that's emotion, right? And who we are as people, that changes so much. I need that school to be my vibe in 2, 3 years, not right now, right?
Right.
Because we change so much. But this is why I always say to families as I'm consulting and meeting with them, this is where your heart and your head have to meet.
Mm-hmm.
So your heart is the emotion. Like, I've always dreamt of going to football games, and I've always seen myself a part of this community. That's the emotion, and that's fine because I need you to like it somewhat, right?
Right.
But the head is where, okay, can I afford it for 4 years? Okay, what percentage of students who graduate from this program are employed 6 months after graduation?
Mm-hmm.
Hey, are there other people who look like me? And whatever that means, whatever representation means to me,
Mm-hmm.
are those individuals there? Because I'm a firm believer, like, success in college, one of the through lines that I think all students have to some extent is comfortability.
Mm-hmm.
Because when I'm comfortable with where I go to school, I wake up in a somewhat pleasant mood more often
Yeah.
than not. When I wake up in that good mood, I go to class with that good mood. When I go to class with that good mood, I retain information better. When I
Right.
retain information better, I perform better. My GPA goes up. When my GPA goes up, I have more job and internship opportunities. And when I have
Mm-hmm.
more job and internship opportunities, what happens? I have more career flexibility. But what
Mm-hmm.
was the foundation of that building? It
Right.
was comfortability. So, like, that's one of the things, especially for my young students of color. Am I wanted here? That's a
Mm.
question. That's a 2022 question. I
Right.
was not thinking about that as much. You know, I'm be
Nope.
honest. Representation was never a word. Well, first of all, we didn't really understand it in the way that we understand it now. We weren't talking about it
Mm-hmm.
as openly as we talk about it now. But I never once thought about
Mm-mm.
representation in the
Nope.
way that a lot of students come to me
And I
about
don't
it
think we
now.
were
But
allowed to think about it. Like,
no, that's true. That's
yeah,
true.
it was
That's
like you're gonna
true.
have to make it work. Like that's
Yeah,
what we grew up with. And the
I
thing I
agree.
like about Amy's generation is like they're like we're not tolerating that. So sorry that y'all went through that, but what's
Yeah.
not happening here
Well, see,
is
we
any of
got the
this.
spillover from the boomers, right?
Right.
Because, like, with our parents' generation, they were like, "You suck it up," right?
Like
But with when millennials came into things, millennials were like, "No, I want to talk about some of this stuff." Because I always say, like, it was very clear growing up, like, you don't talk about religion, you don't talk about money, you don't talk about
hmm
politics, right?
hmm
But then the millennials came along and were like,
hmm
I kind of want to talk about some of this stuff." And now
hmm
Gen Z's like, "Oh, we're talking about it," right?
They're like,
So,
here's
it,
an infographic that I made in my spare time while I was in the bathroom at my high school
yeah.
at the sink. I decided to just make an infographic because some of you don't know. Like, and I think that's to me, it's so. I think though one of the things that I don't like, a lot of students will look at a number and they'll say, "Oh, it's like 7%, 8%." Inflation of numbers is real in college
Mhm,
admissions. But
mhm.
they're like, oh, it's a 7% black population. What type of students is that? Like if you're not actually connecting with the actual community, it could be 7% of people that don't vibe with anybody, and
Yeah,
it's all
true.
like it's little islands, or it's 7% of students from this particular background, who went to prep school, and you're not in that clique, and so
Yes.
you have to. So I think you have to figure out. You have to have the conversations with the students that look like you and hold the identities that you have, and then
Yes.
talk to them about their experiences in the classroom, because as somebody at Virginia Tech, it was not as bad as I thought it was going to be. um, but as somebody who's gone to a campus that is very different than my college, your community is what you're going to have to rely on, and if you
Hmm.
don't have that solid community, but at the end of the day, if you don't have a solid community, but the classroom experiences are there, then maybe you can make it work.
Yes.
Amy, talking to students, how big of a role has that played in your process?
I mean, I think I talked to Judith
Yeah,
uh, at Richmond, and then I also talked to a friend of my mom's at VCU, and I think just talking to students, especially Judith, um, just talking about the community and then the Black community that they have at those schools and how they support each other through their education is what really helped me. Also, make decisions on what community I want to be a part of,
right.
because community is strong to me. So I think just talking to the students that actually go to the school and see and be a part of those communities is what helps me make a decision.
And I'm guessing you heard what you needed to hear for those two to be your final two choices.
Yeah.
Okay,
And see,
good.
that's the problem, right? Like, it's like there's nothing wrong. I think that is the hardest decision that you have to make when everything is right at two campuses and there's nothing wrong. And it's just a matter, I think for Amy, it's worse because, the delay that we have, she hasn't seen the financial aid. So, like, the financial aid would
Yeah.
make everything crystal
Yeah.
clear, right? If there is a difference and how much of a difference, right? But I
Yeah.
think when there's nothing wrong and you can't find anything wrong, and you're like, but what? And the campuses are so divergent. Is there any advice that you have, Jeremy, about like how do you decide? Like, do I want big? Do I want small? Because I remember my mother said she dropped me off. She saw the cows. She went to
Yeah.
like a parent session. They were like, your daughter will fail out. Your son or daughter will fail out if they do this. They don't turn in their work. They don't go to class. They have early classes. And my mother was like, check, 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 check. She's going to be home in a
Yeah.
month. And for some reason, I just decided this is an opportunity for me to prove to everybody that I'm not who you think I am and I can rise to this
Mhm.
occasion. And I think for me it worked. But how do you just, like, I was like, okay, it's 100 people in this lecture hall. I'm going to sit in the very front row. Things like that that made me just make things smaller at a very big campus. But Jeremy,
Yeah.
how do you decide if, because I haven't ever experienced it, right? Like a lot of
Mm.
us, for even if we went to a big college, we've gone to a small grad program, or
Mhm.
we've worked in a small work environment. How do you make those decisions about what you should be looking at in the final days?
What can I not compromise on? Would be the first
Hmm.
question I ask myself, because there's something like, with all things being equal, some one of those places is going to offer me the core of what I want more than the other place. Like Emily, like you said it, at the very beginning, I'm looking for that place that's going to offer me what I want. That was a very generic statement, but I know that statement, that statement to me was the gate, and behind the gate is what you're actually talking about,
Mm,
because there's something you're not willing to compromise on that
Mhm.
lies behind that statement. And I think we have to be honest with ourselves, because that, in sharing that with somebody else, and I'm not going to force you to share that with me, because that might be something that's very vulnerable to you, right?
mhm,
But we have to be honest with ourselves here. Like, what is that thing? Like, for me, I needed a school that was going to have a great academic reputation. I come from a family of educators. We do
mhm.
not
Same.
play that party school type of thing. We're like, you're not going to have actually any quality education to show for it. So that mattered a ton to me. I wanted a place that had pride because my high school had pride, and I loved how we wore our
And
stuff
look at Amy, she's
everywhere.
like,
Right.
yeah.
So I'm like, my college has got to have that. Like, I'm not compromising on that. And I did not want to be financially destitute by the time I left. The beauty of having a lot of older people around me, like my sister who's 6 years older than me, and other friends of hers who are older, is I got to see through them the fallout of decisions. Every decision has a consequence with it, whether it be positive or negative. Every single one you make. So I was able to see with them, okay, where did he go right or where did she go wrong? And one of the things I saw is like, dude, when you have a lot of undergraduate debt, makes it really hard to get out of your parents' house post-graduation. Right? Because like we get to that point, we want to spread our wings and we want to be out, and mom's cramping my style. If dad asked me to take out the trash one more time, I don't have to tell him something, right? We all say that at 18.
We say it in our head.
We said it in our head, right? Don't say it to you. Listen, I wasn't saying it to my dad in actuality.
You're behind the door and you're like, and you're like, can I help?
Yeah.
No, I didn't say what. I didn't say what. I
was just saying, what's the game on? Is the game on? That's what I was saying, right? So I wasn't going to actually say it to him, but, like, I saw where people at 22, that feeling is even deeper than it was at 18. So what kind of financial flexibility am I going to have at that point in my life that's going to allow me to have my own place and have a car payment and all that type of stuff? And so I did not want to be in debt for the rest of my life. Now, this led me to choosing a university I never, if you had made me wager, and I'm not a betting man, I don't play with my money, but if you had made me make a bet, I would have never wound up where I wound up. I actually wound up attending and graduating from the campus I work at, Penn State Brandywine. Now, I hated Penn State growing up. I saw the alumni. I said, why are these people, why are they so crazy?
Yeah.
Right? Exactly. I'm like,
Virginia Tech and Penn State, Cole.
You have these schools like that, and I would just sit there and I'd look at these people at the beach they got the Penn State umbrellas and the beach towels, and I'm like, you're not the only school out there. And so I looked at everywhere else. But when I looked at, my decisions in the schools that were in front of me, I wasn't excited about some of the offers I had halfway through my senior year. Well, why is that? Well, because I was running constantly away from the school that was the perfect fit. Until my mom called me on it. She's like, why was Penn State not on your list? And I said, look, I do not see myself being one of 46,000 students. I do not see myself in State College, Pennsylvania, which, like you said, is farmland, same type of thing. And my parents were like, they have a multi-campus system. I was like, what? Right. And so then I looked at these smaller campuses and I did find those things in the serving size I want. But, sometimes for students, it's getting out of your own way. Sometimes you can long for something else, like school A. And it's like, man, I don't know if the package is going to come through in the way I want, but it's got prestige and it's got this, it's got that. But school B is going to put you in a better financial situation. Yeah, it's maybe not as glamorous, right? People might have to ask you, like, where exactly is that located? But if I'm going to be supported as a student, if I'm going to have professors who actually act like they want me there, if I'm going to be able to be within a stone's throw with my family, if that's what I long for, then that's the decision, right? So sometimes we have to go back to that thing I'm not willing to compromise on, because we all have that thing. And we have to own it and be fine with that, because at a certain point in time, like indecisiveness, one of the problems with it, especially because we're 6 days out, is it robs you of time and opportunity, right? You sit still with indecisiveness. You're not making any progress. If you are indecisive by the time we get to Friday, then how has your situation improved any since Monday? You've been stagnant, right? You have to, at some point in time, if you're a prospective student and you're making these decisions, you have to buy in to a certain university at some point in time, because that's what allows you to move forward. Right, and start planning for the future. You gotta find that uncompromising thing, and then make a decision. Because let me tell you something. Like you said, this lie about there being the one perfect school, and a large part of that is marketing. Once colleges and universities became a part of this marketing machine, it really caused a lot of damage. But it's not true There are thousands of students who graduate from thousands of different universities every year. Most of those universities have been around since the 1800s, many since the 1900s, even mid 1900s. So that tells me as a student, there's a lot of places that are really good at what they do. So let me stop overthinking it. This is not the last time I'm going to be able to go away from home. If you're a student who can't afford to go far away from home, you can't afford to pay room and board. So you're going to have to commute. Guess what? You know when you're living away is going to happen? When you're 22, you have minimal debt, you have a job, and you're able to move out of your parents' house. You know, oh, I just have to study abroad. I have students like this. Oh my God, if I don't study abroad, right? God forbid you go to Europe at 25. God forbid, right? Like, calm down. You don't have to accomplish everything in 4 years.
You know, I never thought of that because it's like students are obsessed with like studying abroad and internships, and I don't feel like that was part of our marketing when we were going. So it was like it was a feature, but it wasn't like a highlighted feature. Amy, what did you hear while he was talking?
Honestly, it's helping me make my. I think I am a very indecisive person because I can see the goods in everything. I can see the stress in both. So I think honestly, I think what I need to do is just go sit down and pull all the like pros, I guess pros of both schools, and really see what is important to me in all of those pros and figure out what school has most of my important stuff that I need in a college.
And I think like close your eyes, right? Because like sometimes when you close your eyes, you're like you see yourself on a couch talking to a professor, right? And like where is that going to happen? Right? So or you see yourself doing research, where is that going to happen? Or you see yourself like you might see yourself studying abroad. Where is that money actually going to follow you when you study abroad? So it's not a burden. Where is that going to happen? Because I think you have an idea, and I think TV plays a huge role in this. You have an idea of what college is, and is not as cool as just like prom is not as cool as it is on TV for those of you watching internationally. Neither is college. Like I was like, we're gonna be out here and we're gonna be like in these cute little skirts. Somehow my hair is like always brushed and flowy, and it's just out here, and people are just partying on the tables and what. And it was sticky, icky, and gross most of the time. And our hair was not brushed. And thank God I grew up during the Juicy Couture era of the 2000, because I could just, like roll out of bed, throw on a Juicy sweatshirt that I got from Marshall's, and then just keep it moving because that, like, my hair was never brushed.
Listen,
and Black women, where are you going to get your hair done is an essential question. Like,
let me tell you,
you might
choose
need
the wrong school.
Plan.
Listen, fellas, your hairline will be jacked up. You have to ask that question. Where do I get my hair cut? It is a serious question.
Right.
And you know what's funny, Jen? I'm so glad you're demystifying this because the first 2 weeks on campus is picturesque like you thought, right? Because nobody's really got assignments and everybody's getting up early. Like I remember, I was ironing and all that type of stuff heading to class the first 2 weeks. Then week 3, you realize it's all a lie. Right. And you're just like, I'm gonna have my basketball shorts on, I'm gonna have my Juicy Couture on, I'm gonna have my hoodie on, and you start making fun.
My mother was like, do not wear pajamas to your classes. I will come down there myself. So I was like, Juicy Couture, it's pajamas.
Well, listen, today that's out the door because half the kids on my campus wearing pajamas. Right. But it's funny, like you're gonna be bored some days. Like that's the type of stuff that like some students will be ready to transfer, and then like you really talk to me, you're like, okay, what's going on? It's like I'm bored, and I'm like, well, did you join a club or organization? No. Have you gone to any of the sporting events? No. What do you do after class? I go back to my dorm room. No wonder you're bored. If you did that at home, you'd be bored. And guess what? Boredom a lot of times leads to creativity. It's been that case
Right.
since we were kids. Like,
Right.
being a parent myself, like his pediatrician and stuff would say, sometimes your child needs to be bored. You can't
Right.
bail them out of everything. Not every day on your college campus is it going to be glamorous. You're not going to have a great day every day. Not every one of your professors is going to be the greatest person you've ever studied under, right? But that's life.
You're not
Not every
solving a
day I go to work.
murder. Like how
Yeah.
to get away with murder. You're not solving murders every day. Like,
Yeah.
it was like when I watched that show, I was like, when did they go to class? Because somebody was like, I murdered somebody. I'd be like, I don't have time for this. I have an outline that is due in the morning. You figure that out.
You
We
don't even
time
have
for
the
this.
money to get a burger every day, right?
Like,
Like if your meal plan, we got students exhausting their meal plans already because they went way too heavy with the Doritos in the first couple of weeks, and now they got no money left on their meal plan. So it's like, okay, if worse comes to worse too, a question I would ask myself now is like, where am I going to be still okay with that, right? Like if there's nothing, quote unquote, popping off on campus, if there's nothing crazy, football season is over, our basketball team is trash, like there's nothing else going on. Like, is there anything for me? It's just like when I talk to prospective athletes and I'm like, you got to go somewhere where if you blow out your ACL and your scholarship is gone, you still like it there.
Yeah.
It's a very similar thing with college. Like, hey, if I'm having a bad day, is there still something about this community that I'm cool with? Or like the next week when I'm over that bad week, like I'm going to be like, all right, it's good to be back. Everything's cool. We'll figure it out. Like that. Those are some of the bigger obstacles. Like a lot of times when I think about this, I have 4 steps that I think students could follow. Like when you sent me the topic, I was like, all right, Jeremy, like if I was to reduce this down, what are the 4 things that I would do? I would tell every student to do. Well, first is what we just talked about with Emily, right? Take inventory of the choices you actually have, not the schools that you're still on wait list. That's not happening right now. That's not happening. What offers do I actually have right now? And what are those pros and cons that come with each, right? Then from there, I say, okay, whatever I decide, my heart and my head have to meet, like we talked about. What makes the financial sense, the academic sense? Like, for instance, we'll have some students where they really need academic flexibility. That's like one of the things, because like, okay, you might have a major right now and your family's like, my daughter, she's going to go pre-med, and everybody, bleh, 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 right? But in the back of your mind, you're like, dude, anatomy and physiology, nope. The biology, nope. Right. And so you're most likely going to need to go somewhere where it's financially, but also academically flexible. What school on my list is going to allow for that? Right. Because some schools, you're admitted into a program and that's where you're going to be. Right. They don't let you switch it. So, that's where my head and my heart have to meet. Okay. Like I might have this one school on my list and I'm a little worried. Right. Because it's a school that's, I can afford it. It's going to be a little bit of a stretch, but I didn't see any Black tour guides. And I'm a little concerned about it, but it does have the academic flexibility that I need. And they do have multicultural affair offices on campus, right? So that's where you got that heart in the head. Okay. So I didn't see any Black tour guides, but it does seem like they have resources to help me.
And
right.
having
So
gone
like
into those places.
You gotta find those types of places, right? Then from that step, when I have my head and my heart meet and I'm thinking about things logically, you gotta follow through, right? At some point you have to say, this is my choice. No FOMO, no fear of missing out. No, what is auntie gonna say? What is uncle gonna say? Follow through. You've made the decision now and you've got to buy in. I was watching a basketball game last night. The Celtics beat the Nets, right? And they were talking to Jason Tatum, the star of the Celtics, after the game.
Of course, yeah.
They asked him
exactly what you're talking
terrible.
about.
They asked him a terrible question, like reporters typically do, but this one was a little bit more thoughtful. Charles Barkley said to him, "Hey, it looks like since January you've been a different team. What has led to that?" And Jason Tatum said, "We finally bought in." That's what we have to do as prospective students, as
That
students
feels very UNC.
now. At a certain point in time, I got to say, this is my choice. This is where I'm going, and I'm not changing my mind anymore, right? Bar some cataclysmic event, I'm not changing my mind on that. Then from there, my 4th and final step is to realize what we talked about earlier. that my success in college is not dependent on the school alone, but what I do while I am there. I always joke that what I call a Yale graduate with a 2.0 is unemployed, right?
Mhm.
It's not the institution, it's the experiences, the internships, what you took advantage of there.
Mhm.
Ask questions when you're on campus. Figure out who are going to be my people, who are going to be
Mhm.
those people in my corner. Like I always joke, like my university shaman. Like who's that person who's going to be like, oh, you need this? Go to this person. Like on
Mhm.
my campus,
Mhm.
that's our admissions office. A lot of times we
Right.
bond with the students, and they're like, hey, Germ, where do I go to get this done? And I'm like, oh, let me walk you over to the Learning Resource Center, right? Like
Right.
find out who that person's going to be for you and ask them
Mhm.
questions, engage with them, open yourself up to be mentor. Like we
Mhm.
talked about, I want people talk about all the time. I want mentors and I want mentors. And we see this especially in the professional world, Jen.
Yeah.
But then
Yeah.
it's like, are you the type of person who allows yourself to be mentored? That's
Right.
a whole nother part of the conversation. Be one of those students that allows yourself to be mentored, to be led,
Right. Right.
and then go to career fairs, fall on your face a little bit,
Right.
like fumble through what makes you special or unique, and then go back to the next career fair, get it right that time. Put
Mhm.
yourself in uncomfortable situations. Like that is what you do that's going to lead to your success post college, regardless of the name that is on that diploma. Right, those
Right.
4 steps is going to lead you from being indecisive to decisive. I'm really confident in that.
Yeah, I would say every person that I know who's successful can point to two or three people on campus that
Mm-hmm.
help them. It's like for
Mm-hmm.
me, it's Zenobia Hikes, Dr. Betsy Flanagan, you know, and I'm not even sure if Kim realizes. I feel like I need to reach out to Kim, who was on the board of visitors, the secretary. She had a huge impact on me, just the way she carried herself and how she organized the meeting. I just would take notes of like how the things that she would do to make sure that everybody was comfortable. And so
Mm-hmm.
it's like, is there somebody that you've already met that you could say, this person could really pour into me and nurture me and make me feel comfortable? But
Yeah.
I think the other thing is, one of the things that we talk about in our community, and I don't like this conversation, is like, oh, I have imposter syndrome. Like, I have
Uh-huh.
imposter syndrome. Like, I just don't know if I deserve to be there. And it's like, well, when have they ever made you feel like, when have you ever been able to be your authentic self?
Mm-hmm.
Never. Okay. So you're never going to feel comfortable. You're always going to feel like an imposter. And if you think that going, and listen, I love me some HBCUs. I'm not,
Mm-hmm.
please don't come for me, HBCU grads. I love me some HBCUs, but even my friends who went to HBCUs will tell you that it is not peaches and cream every day over
Mm-hmm.
there. Like, you think that you fit in because you are black, but then you learn that black is not monolithic at all.
Yes.
There is very
Yeah.
different elements. And so I think you have to say to yourself, I mean, I just remember thinking going to farmland is not for me. Because I remember my parents were like, okay, we're going to go downtown. We're going downtown. And then like they drove past the street. They're like, okay, that was it. And I was like, what happened to the city? And they're like, there's no city. This is Virginia Tech. But then I learned the campus is really self-contained.
Mm-hmm.
And if you are willing to walk 3 miles to a barn, you can get anywhere on
Yeah.
campus. Like it's going to be cold, but I think those are the things. And that kind of forged, I just remember saying, I don't care. I'm going to make this work because
Yeah.
I don't have a choice but to
Mm-hmm.
make this work.
Yeah. And
I'm
that's
not,
beautiful.
I'm
I
not
mean,
going
there's
to
so
I'm not going to be embarrassed going back to my parents and being like, I can't do this. Like, no.
we all learn that lesson. Well, hopefully most of us learn that lesson. Can't speak in absolutes, but
Right.
we learn that lesson at different phases in our lives. And what you're talking about reminds me of a story my mom told me just a couple of weeks ago. I went to visit my parents. They live in Florida now, and we talked about when we decided to move out of the city, because we lived in Philadelphia. I went to school in Philadelphia, and at a certain point in time, the specific area we lived into really took a turn. And my parents were debating, whether or not they should move and all of this type of stuff, and they felt a lot of guilt around that decision. And someone that my mom worked with, white lady in her office, said this to my mom. She said, break the cycle for your children. Because she said, me and my family, I would never think about that, Mincy. That's what she said to my mom. She's like, this whole guilt, oh, but what would other people say? And am I turning? She's like, we don't think that way, right? But you're going to hold yourself back and your family back from this very important decision because of that, right? And that really liberated my parents to make some tough decisions for us at that point in time. And so I say that, I use that as an example. Like sometimes we talk ourselves out of it, right? Well, I don't see the representation. I don't see. Well, maybe there's a growth opportunity there still. Now, for some of our students, don't compromise on that. Right. I'm not saying compromise on it, but for others of us, like this might be that opportunity to break the cycle for ourselves. You know, sometimes we keep ourselves in captivity mentally, socially, right? And so it might be an opportunity to liberate yourself or to put yourself in an uncomfortable situation. When that caterpillar goes into that chrysalis, I'm sure he's not comfortable. Right. But when he comes out as that butterfly, look at what took place in the midst of that uncomfortability, growth and beauty. And I see that happen with our students all of the time when they allow themselves to be uncomfortable for a little bit. Right. The typical way we know we're growing as a human being are those pains you and I talked about before we went live, right? When my knees are aching and Emily's shaking her head, she's like, oh, I remember that, right? When you had those growth pains, it hurt, but it was a sign that, hey, I'm going to be taller, right? I'm growing into a grown woman now, right?
I'm 5'3", so I never actually.
Yeah, my wife's 5'2", so she's like, shut up,
I'm
right?
I never
but you know, but we're developing, and there's a lot that comes with that. And you know, this time for a lot of our students, like this is a time to be selfish and say, what do I need? Not what does my friend think I need? What does my neighbor think I need? What does my waste management, you know, the trash guys, what do they think? We got to get out of that. And I sympathize with our students right now because it's harder than ever before to do that. A lot easier for me to do that without Facebook, Instagram, TikTok. A lot easier for me. Not as easy for these students to do it, right? And you know, and blogs, and like I was on the algorithm, YouTube algorithm hit me hard the other day, and I had all these like students, like a day in the life of a such and such student, and I was like, oh, this is the worst, because they were not accurate depictions of what it's actually like to be a college student, and some of these kids we're working with are watching this nonsense, right? So you know,
it's all roses.
It's not all roses, and that's okay. That's okay.
Amy, have you decided? Like, you know, one of the things that I would say is one of the biggest decisions I had to make is, do I want to be an extension and a growth, right, of the person I was in high school? Or do I want to like do a complete transformation, 180 degrees and become somebody completely unrecognizable? Are you thinking about that? Or is the pressure of social media starting to get in? Because it's like, I need to make my post. I need to do. What are you thinking of?
I think it's all, for me, social media. I've never been into like the big, oh, I have to look into like exactly the day in the life or things like that. Or like, I've never been into that. I really, when it comes to making a decision, I've always been basing it off my own stuff. But I think coming from my parents as somebody so close to me, I think those are the stuff that are kind of getting to my head and like stuff like that. So I think it's from parents that it's really getting to my head, and also like myself. Like sometimes, you know, you don't know exactly what you could do at each college. So like I don't know like if I'd fit in there, because you won't know until you get there. But I think just making the decision off that and not having other people like influence your decision, which is hard, especially when it's parents. But
I'm a big believer of taking a day off. Like, listen, I know I shouldn't say it, but the days after you've been admitted, they're hard to continue to show up to high school. I did because, like Jeremy, my mother was a principal in the county, and people knew if I was there or not. So I knew I was going to be caught if I tried to sip. But I even told my mother, I was like, "Can I do senior skip day?" She's like, "No." And then she picked me up for IHOP that day, and I was like, "What was the point? Like you think this is a nice thing that you're doing, but I could have skipped if you were gonna pick me up early, right?" Like, and she was like, "I just wanted." She's like, I completely forgot. And she did. She legitimately forgot it was senior skip day. And just like, I think I want to take her to IHOP today and, celebrate whatever. But I am a big believer in taking the day off, like going to a park, going somewhere, even taking a drive and being like, imagining who you're going to be in 4 years without anybody's influence. And I'm also a big believer, as long as it's not going to cost your parents an insane amount of money, because some of y'all don't, like, some of y'all are like, I'm an adult, except for I want everybody to pay for my bills. And that's not adulthood, right? But I think you have to say to yourself, okay, what's reasonable? And I think you have to sit down with your parents and say, you said you would love me no matter what, right? What is the upper limit, right? Like, just tell me, what is I can't go past this cost? Just tell me that right now. And then I'm also a big believer of take all the offers back on the table. Because like sometimes we're just like, nope. Put all the offers back in on the table. We're like, go back through it one last time. And then just say, I know you're waiting for financial aid. Say, okay, if it's not this, I'm not considering it. If it is this, I will consider it. But this is what I want. And you have to say to your parents, if you said that you're going to support me no matter what, and this is my upper limit of what I can spend, and, I personally was working, I know Amy is working, Amy, you're working. If I'm willing to say, I'm willing to pay $1,000 more to get what I want over your limit, then fine. But also just sit down and say, you said you're going to support me no matter what. So now we're at no matter what. You might not be happy with my decision, but can you support me? And I think understanding your parents and the dynamic is really important, because if you're going to spend the next 4 years, like, there's just some fights, and I wish I had learned this earlier, there's some fights that are not worth it. It's like, okay, I could go to this college, but my mother is going to talk about this other college for the next 4 years, and I could be happy at that college. So I'm willing to give that up to just have, peace. But at the same time, go and don't be like, the minute something goes bad, you're like, see, I didn't want to go to this college and you made me go. Nobody's making you go to this college. Ultimately, it is your decision unless the financial aid is not right. And that's because you don't have money. And that's fine. Because all of us, like, it is the 26th of the month, so it's almost close to the first of the month. All of us would love to do a lot of things with money that we don't have.
Yeah.
So that's learning how to be an adult. Like, I would love to just do, and you have to learn that there are financial limits to what you want. But Amy, I don't envy you, because
I'm glad it's over for us, right? Like, I look at these students and I'm just like, oh my God. Like, sometimes you miss like that exploration feeling. It's almost like when you fall in love for the first time and you see other people like that. I've been married for a long time, and you look at other little couples fall in love for the first time and you're like, oh, I remember that. And I kind of miss it. But then I'm like, no, you know what I don't miss? I don't miss always wondering where I stand with that woman, right? Like, I don't miss that. I know where I stand. And so it's a similar thing with like the college going. When I see students walking campuses and falling in love for the first time, I'm like, oh man, I remember those days. Those are great days. But I also now I'm like, I'm so glad I'm beyond that.
I'm so glad I'm not as dumb as I was when I went to college. I was so dumb. I was so dumb. But I think that's the thing. You do look back and you miss it. But I think the beauty of being older is realizing, like, the dots always seem to connect at one point, and there's like hard points where they're not connecting. But then you're like, oh, that's why that happened, and oh, that's why that happened, and oh, that's why that happened. It's because the dots are connected. Before we go, let's talk about, with Decision Day, there has emerged something that I like to call the undecided voter, where we know what you've decided, but you like the attention of being undecided. And I have students where I'm looking at them and I'm like, I know where you're going. So why are we still pretending you don't know? And I'm lucky not to have that situation this year, but I've seen it happen multiple times where students like the attention, they like the events, they like the, you know, admissions officers wooing over them, they like knowing that they're going to be able to put 15 logos on the back of their, you know, I got accepted into all these colleges. And then towards the end, they start to miss, because the thing about admissions is a kid gets to feel special again once they get in. And the whole 4 years of high school, they've been told, like, what if it's not enough? What if it's not enough? And now it is enough.
Yeah.
But then they're like, I'm not used to being loved in this way, or told that I'm such a great person. How do you get past the undecided decision day complex and just accept that it's time to make a decision?
I- that's a great question. You know, some students, some kids are just always going to be about that drama. We know those kids as adults now. We work with some of these people, like they haven't changed. You know, like they'll sit there and they're like, you know, how are you doing? And they don't really care. They just want to know, is something wrong with you? Because I want to know what it is so I can tell other people.
I heard about like that enrollment problem. I'm so glad you got through it though, Brian. Yeah.
No, so you under enrolled. So that's a thing, right? Like there's always going to be those types of people, and we have to, you know, it's okay to cut people out of your life. And so if you're a student who is like, those people are kind of grinding your gears a little bit, they're getting on your nerves, it's okay to silence their post or to completely unfriend or whatever that you have to do there. You know, my concern and a lot of my focus right now is on a different type of undecided voter, and that's the kid who's not necessarily going to do this. Right. Like I met with a student last week as part of one of those school district advisory boards I'm on, and she's a current high school sophomore. And she was talking about like, hey man, this transition back to being in school full time has been really hard. The last time I did a full year of school in person was 7th grade. She says, now I am just getting used to being a high school student. And it's April of her sophomore year of high school. Right. Now, our current seniors were what, freshmen as their last full year of school. I'm talking to some students who are like, yo, bro, I'm not quite sure I'm ready to vote at all on this whole thing and go at all. Yeah, I'm not sure. And guess what? Some of these kids have deposited. So although on paper, we are expecting them, be ready for new student orientation when some of those kids are not coming onto your campus. Like that's the unregistered voter or the undecided voter I'm really nervous about right now, because some of these students, they obviously have the capacity to do well in school, but they just don't have the confidence that they can do well in school. No one helped them process the trauma that they have experienced as a person and as a student. And we've just opened everything back up and we want to pretend that everything's fine academically, scholastically, and it's not. Like that, those are the kids I'm really worried about right now.
Can you talk about, okay, I know we're not supposed to talk about this.
Oh boy.
But sometimes a student makes a deposit and then realizes right after they make the deposit, they're like, no, that was the wrong choice. Yeah. And then there's technically, under the law, as a lawyer, you have sometimes said, I will not go anywhere else. Do you hunt down people who turn in deposits and then don't show up?
No, I don't have the time for that. And you know, like I don't have the time. I don't have the time. But you know, we're also most of us so far, you know, a lot has changed in this post Department of Justice NACAC world, right? As of today, most of us are not that petty, right? Because we realize, like, reasonable people in college admission right now understand that what our young ones are up against right now, it's unprecedented. No other classes really had to face something quite like this. And so, yeah, there might be some students where it doesn't make sense to follow through on that deposit. And I'm not tracking you down, making you feel like dirt because you said, you know what, Jeremy, I can't do it. Because here's the thing, I'd rather you do that now than decide that halfway through the semester. And now you have a bill Now you have a bunch of incompletes and you have a bunch of Fs, and now you owe us money and can't do anything with that transcript until you pay us that money. Like, I just, as an ethical person that has a conscience and wants to be able to sleep at night, like, I don't want that preventing a student from making the best choice for them and their families. Like, okay, you pay me $230. Oh, well, if you have to go somewhere else, right? But I do think, for a student, yeah, decisions like that we make, they do impact people, right? Because universities, although it's not your problem, we do at a certain point in time have to figure out who's coming and figure out budgets and how much food to order and who's going to be like, there are major things that are tied to those deposits.
Let them know.
But a lot of those students, yeah, but a lot of those students I've experienced, Jen, that are making that decision, they're not making it lightly. They didn't just throw, like, most of us don't have $230 to just throw and just say, like, oh, you know what, guess what?
Please contact us. Contact us right now. Just put it in the chat. If you have extra money, just throw it in the chat. I can give you my Venmo. It's all Jen the Tutor, actually. Just go ahead, put it in the chat. I'll take the money. But I think that's the thing, is like students. And the other thing before we go, and Amy, I'm going to let you have kind of like the last word, but a lot of students come to your institution and they're like, I'm going to 2 years here and I'm going to go somewhere else. And I'm like, but you probably aren't. Like, not because it's not easy, but because you're probably going to just fall in love where you're at, right? And I think one of the beauties of college is if you are willing to let go of the idea of what could have been. And I was very quick to let go of the idea of what could have been. I was like, oh, they have a law school. I can just go there. I can go to UVA for law school. Once I let go of what could have been, I was like, I am about, listen, you might not have gone to a party school. Some of us did.
Yeah.
And we partied. Some of us, like, hypothetically partied from Thursday to Sunday and then got up at 1 o'clock on Sunday and did the work until midnight the next night. But my schedule was Sunday to Wednesday. Like, I just knew if you don't get your work done by Wednesday, everything breaks down in this system, because Virginia Tech is on from Thursday to Saturday. And I was like, don't start. And this is what happens at party schools. Don't start adding days. Don't be like, Wednesday is a new Thursday. Tuesday is a new Thursday. Monday is a new Thursday. Like, I think Sunday was still sacred. Saturday was football, so like there was some breaks, but you can start whatever. But a lot of students end up, and they're just like, if you just commit to saying, I am going to be happy no matter what, and if I am feeling bad, I'm going to try to do things to not feel bad before I transfer and lose credits, by the way, because a lot of people are going to lose credits if you transfer, unless you go to a Penn State system and the transfer is just very seamless. But
that's the buy-in thing we talked about earlier, right?
The one you're with. Let's go back to the Luther Vandross song. And I feel like my mother, because she says this all the time, love the one you're with. Just go and be like, this is my campus now. And I'm about to do whatever I have to do to make me fall in love.
We got to find a more recent example. Because, Amy's like, Luther, who?
Wait, do you not know who Luther Vandross is?
I told you.
Why would you do that to me, Jeremy? Why would you do that to me?
I'm just saying, we're on Facebook Live. I just know there's some people that are like, who?
I guess he was like, but he was like a better version of Bruno Mars, maybe? Like a significantly better.
Way more soulful. He like a much more mature version.
I know people are like, why are we talking about Luther? Actually, I don't feel like our audience is like, why aren't we talking about Luther?
Listen, go on. If you got Apple Music or you go Spotify, you got to dig into different eras.
You have to hear him sing long ago. Remember how he hit that long ago in that song, that first note, long ago? I was like, I feel like every person in our generation grew up pretending to hate Luther Vandross, but like,
because it was on in the car when we were going here to there. It's like, oh my God, is this Luther again? And in the back, you're just like in the back, you're singing along. But we all have those versions of things, And Amy, your kids are going to have that same version of things.
Yeah, but Amy, last thoughts, because this is going to be our last conversation before you make the biggest decision of your life. So don't mess up, because it could all fall apart. Like can I be honest? I've never heard somebody say, "Hey, buddy, where did it break down?" May 1st, I picked the wrong college, and it just spiraled from. Like, here's the thing: I love decision day because it makes everybody feel special and wanted and whatever. But can I just say this? I know it's going to sound bad, but I'm just going to say it anyway. Nobody cares as much as you care. Nobody, like, I know people are like, but I don't have 15 things to put up. Nobody's like, it's May 1st. Hold on. Let me get my list of the students I need to. Okay. Well, why doesn't she have 15? Oh, nobody cares about decision day as much as you are going to care. And your parents are going to care when they get the bill. Right? So, Amy, last thoughts before decision day.
I just hope it's kind of like there's a crunch time, I guess. So I just hope that I'm able to figure out what I want from these colleges and figure out what is truly best for me. Honestly, I'd be fine at both colleges, and I've been saying that. I love both. I made sure that my list was schools that I like. So
I tried to put some colleges on her list. She'll tell you. I was like,
yeah,
what about this school? She's like, Miss Jen, I'm not applying there. I was like, you haven't done your application for this school.
Yeah. So I just hope I figure it out. I figure out what I want, and I think I will. I think I'll be fine at the end of the day. So
well, you have till Sunday.
Well, no thing, and I remember Anderson Cooper said this once: "Hope is not a plan." So I think at this point, if you're still stuck, it is valid and legitimate. And I don't care what test you have this week, because people are like, "I have a test this week." Nobody cares. Make it up. Take a day then. At this point, we are on Tuesday. You should take a day, Wednesday or Thursday. Don't let this creep into the weekend. And do not, now there's financial aid. If you do not have your financial aid package, then wait, because the minute you put down that deposit, the promises that you have seem to just go away. But don't extend it. Don't be like, I need more time. If you don't have a legit reason it's only indecisiveness, just pick it, and don't be like, oh, and I can always deposit somewhere else. Close the door. Just close the door. And then fully commit. Put your sweatshirt on, if you have a sweatshirt, and just immerse yourself into the life and just say, I'm going to try to make it work for a year. And unless something dramatic happens, where I just cannot get out of bed, I cannot do anything, I'm stuck here for the next 4 years. But Amy, good luck, because good luck. I'm going to be happy no matter where you go, because you're going to be a star anywhere. So
thank you.
And you've already graduated from Beebo University, so
that's right. That's right. Full honors.
Oh wow! Did you know that? Summa cum laude. What? So, I think just make a decision that makes you feel like, just start envisioning your future and move on from that. It doesn't matter where you go. Okay. All right, guys. How can people reach you, Jeremy, if they can't reach you? Well, if they can't reach you, you're accessible because you work at a school.
Yeah, so I mean, you can find me online at Jeremy Beebo on Instagram. You can find me there on Twitter until, who knows if Elon Musk puts up a paywall or whatever. But you can find me on Twitter and Instagram at Jeremy Beebo. Find me on Apple Podcasts and Spotify, the Beebo University Podcast. I've been on a bit of a hiatus right now, but I plan to get back to it once May 1st passes and I have a little bit more time. But thank you, Jim, for having me. I've had so much fun.
We'll have you back when it's not decision day and it's not chaos here. But I'm just so excited for you all to choose. Feel free to reach out to me. If there's a paywall on Twitter, I'm not there. I do want to say, like, I can't wait to have my life back from Twitter, so it might be for the best, but feel free to find Jen the Tutor, real Jen the Tutor on Facebook is the only difference between any of my pages. Amy, we're going to update the audience about your progress, so I'm so excited. We're so excited for you. So let's do this. All right, I'm going to end the broadcast. We'll say goodbye after that, but bye to our public audience. Bye, everyone.
Bye.